Brandon back here again for a trade deadline recap. This is the second time I'm trying to record this. I tried to record this over the weekend, didn't go through, so I haven't had enough time to get this back up. But here I am now, about 5 days after the trade deadline. We got a recap of all the players, the important players that moved at the deadline. I didn't add draft picks, nor did I add prospects in this, because that way this video would be much longer, and a lot of the people don't know who these prospects are, so I'm not going to worry too much about that. But we got all the players here. I'll mention some other, if there's any important picks involved, I'll mention those as well. But we could start off with who I believe are the winners of this year's trade deadline, the Vegas Golden Knights. Who did they acquire? Tomas Hertl, Noah Hanifin, Anthony Mantha. They break the bank once again. People are complaining. I'm a Vegas fan, though, so it's fine. And even then, I still think it's fine. Tampa did the same exact thing in 2020, 2021. I really didn't see that big of an issue with it. Of course, people say the Hawks did it first in 2015. Kane was injured and then actually did come back for the playoffs. And what did they get with that? They got Antoine Vermette, Andrew Desjardins, and Kimmo Timonen. It's not like they were breaking the bank with dominant players. And of course, Hertl is still injured, and Vegas is at threat of falling out of the playoffs right now, so I'm not sure why people are too hyped about that. But Hanifin at the 11th hour, switching it up and going to Vegas. Mantha being traded there, and then Hertl with the big trade at the 11th hour as well. Hertl going with 2 third-round picks to Vegas in exchange for their first-round pick from last year, David Enstrom, and this year's first-round pick. And Hanifin also getting their first-round pick to Calgary. So overall, a lot of moving picks. Vegas only has their 2024 pick left. So I think they moved out 7 draft picks on deadline day. Was it? I don't remember. Now, I don't have all the deadline trades on here. I also have some trades that were made before the deadline, just additions overall. Such as, in this case, we have Vancouver, where they got Elias Lindholm and Nikita Zadorov. Lindholm was nearly moved for Jake Getzel. That would have been a crazy turn of events. He's not worked out the best in Vancouver, but if he can get his game going, he did have some good flashes when he first got there. A good 1-2 down the middle, and Pettersson re-signed as well, which is very important there. So overall, I think Vancouver's in good shape. Florida really didn't need to add much as the number 1 team in the league. They got a third goalie in Hellberg, not bad. Kyle Oposo for some depth and some leadership, looking to get his name on the Stanley Cup, the captain of the Buffalo Sabres. And the big fish they got for a third and a fifth, I think it was, Vladimir Tarasenko. Brilliant move, of course. Ottawa fans are not happy with the return. Tarasenko only waived his no move to go there, so you kind of were screwed either way. You're lucky you got that. Carolina, another winner I'd consider. Evgeny Kuznetsov to fulfill the second-line center position. Jack Drury is not ready to take on that responsibility. And then the big fish of the trade deadline, Jake Getzel is a Carolina Hurricane, along with Ty Smith going the other way in that trade. Of course, Pittsburgh gets back 3 prospects, a couple picks, and then Bunting as a roster player, which we'll get to when we get down to Pittsburgh. I don't have all the teams on the board because not all the teams added players. Chicago, Minnesota, Arizona, Montreal, Ottawa, Washington, St. Louis, I didn't put them on the board because there really weren't any notable additions. Nashville, a team that's in a wild card spot. They decided, let's go get some guys. They got Wade Allison, they got Jason Zucker, and they got Anthony Beauvillier for some depth up there. And you know what? Beauvillier being the only move that the Hawks made for a 5th-round pick. Of course, they should have moved Tyler Johnson and Colin Blackwell, as I mentioned, with Blackwell having a hat-trick and then Johnson having some good games recently. But Beauvillier going to Nashville, Zucker going to Nashville, just adding some scoring depth along the line, see if Beauvillier can make it work there. With Vancouver and Chicago this year, it just was not there. The Rangers, they decided to go for a more middle 6, bottom 6 approach. They got Jack Roslovic and Alex Wenberg from Columbus and Seattle, respectively. And then Nick Patan to shore up some depth on the up front, probably not going to play much. And then Chad Ruhwedel from Pittsburgh, so for 6th, 7th defenseman depth. So the Rangers making another push this year. Colorado was the early winner of the trade deadline, definitely one of the winners. Yakov Trenin, Brandon Duhaime, Casey Middlestat, and Scott Walker. Of course, Trenin from Nashville, Duhaime from Minnesota, so we got some divisions trades going on here, which apparently didn't used to happen a lot back in the day, but I feel like that's all that happens now. Casey Middlestat, the surprise deal of the day, that wasn't even on the deadline day. It was Casey Middlestat for Bowen Byram 1-for-1. Byram's looked great in Buffalo so far, so we'll see if Middlestat can replicate his performances in Buffalo. And then Scott Walker ends up being the Flyers defenseman that leaves Philly. Nick Seeler ends up signing the extension. Dallas, they didn't really need to add much. They're a very complete team. They have a core in between eras. So you got the Jamie Benn, Tyler Seguin, Matt Duchene, that side of the, and then you have Jason Robertson, Rope Hintz, Logan Stankoven when he's come up looks fantastic. So Dallas has a very bright future as well, along with Wyatt Johnston in there. On defense, of course, you have Heiskanen. Tanev is a big addition, and they have a pretty solid defense and goaltending all around. So Dallas is a very dangerous team this year. Toronto didn't go big this year. Of course, last year they went Ryan O'Reilly. There were other years they went out and got some big names. This year they got Connor Dewar from Minnesota, Joel Edmondson from Washington, and Ilya Lyubushkin from Anaheim. Overall, not really big moves, just kind of filling some needs where they needed. Got some defensive depth with Edmondson and Lyubushkin. Dewar has some scoring upside. We'll see if he can fit in right there in Toronto. Tampa Bay didn't make too many moves, but they acquired two notable pieces, Matt Dumba and Anthony Duclair. Dumba from the Coyotes, solid piece on defense. Anthony Duclair's had a really good year, and he's fit right in Tampa so far, so we'll see if he can continue his season. I think he's got 20 goals now, something around there. So for having scoring, I think he scored 17 in San Jose. Pretty good. Moving on, the surprise team, the Philadelphia Flyers. Eric Johnson, Dennis Gurianov, Ryan Johansson, and Jamie Drysdale. Firstly, you got Drysdale for Gauthier, and with a second going to Philly as well. So very good move, I think, by Danny Briere. Gauthier says he doesn't want to play there. Get Drysdale back. Fair enough. Ryan Johansson's in with the Lehigh Valley Phantoms. That was bizarre. Ryan Johansson did not work out in Colorado. They trade him to Philadelphia. He goes to the minors. Surprised he's not filling a spot in their top 4 centers. That's really surprising. Dennis Gurianov, kind of a project to work on. Of course, he was really good in Dallas. Had a fall off. Ended up in Montreal. Ended up in Dallas. No, not Dallas. Ended up in Nashville. And I think they traded Gurianov for Allison 1-for-1. So that's how that deal went down. And then Eric Johnson. That's kind of their veteran leadership position, as Philadelphia is still in a playoff spot and look to be gaining some ground on the Islanders to keep that final Metro spot. But Eric Johnson, some leadership in there. He has a Stanley Cup ring. So if they do end up going to the playoffs, they do have some leadership experience. And if they're in, they're in. And the goal is to win at that point. Edmonton, 3 guys they got. Troy Stecher, who's collected Canadian teams now, like Tyler Toffoli, which we'll get to. Adam Henrique and Sam Carrick. I expected bigger things from Edmonton, to be honest. I'm not sure what I was expecting, but Henrique filled a middle 6 forward position. Carrick is already got in a fight, and Stecher, reliable on defense. You don't really need too much out of him. Bottom 2 defensemen. And of course, my camera freezes, so you know what? We're just going to continue this video the way it is, and you're going to see my face like that staring at Winnipeg for the next bit. So sorry about that, because I'm not redoing this video again. Colin Miller, Tyler Toffoli, and Sean Monahan all going to the Winnipeg Jets, another winner of the trade deadline. Colin Miller adds some defensive depth. Tyler Toffoli, of course, a big name in which the Devils did not get enough for. And Sean Monahan, who they added prior to the deadline, very good play. He's fit right in Winnipeg so far. Of course, Toffoli's now been with all of Western Canada, except Edmonton, so very interesting there. He's got, I think, 4. He's collecting Canadian teams like Thanos collects Infinity Stones. So, yeah. Boston didn't add too much. They added Andrew Peeke from Columbus and Pat Maroon from Minnesota. Just some depth. Peeke has a little bit of upside. Maroon, of course, end of his career. He's an experienced guy, 3 Stanley Cups there. So we'll see how he fits in Boston. LA did absolutely nothing, and which was kind of a surprise. They almost got Linus Ullmark, which probably would have been Cam Talbot going the other way. But Ullmark rejected the trade, which was very, very interesting. For the Islanders, they got Robert Bortuzzo. That was prior to the deadline, months before. For Detroit, they got Radim Shimmick, defenseman out of San Jose. That hasn't looked too bad. For Calgary, they got Andrei Kuzmenko back in the Elias Lindholm trade. Of course, these are the non-playoff teams. Islanders, the Red Wings are in, but they didn't do much. So the top 15 you see up here, the top 15 are what I consider playoff teams, and everything below is potential, but not likely, or just out of it. So yeah, Calgary gets Kuzmenko. New Jersey reshapes their entire goaltending. You got Jake Allen and Kaapo Kähkönen now starting. Vanacek is out. Schmidt is in the AHL, and Nico Dawes is somewhere. But Jake Allen, Kaapo Kähkönen, and then Curtis McDermott as someone to beat out of you. And of course, Matt Rempe gets suspended, and McDermott had words to say after that now. So anyway. Seattle, they made a trade earlier this season with Colorado to acquire Tomas Tatar. Nothing really huge there. Tatar just in Seattle. Wasn't moved at the deadline either, so Seattle acquisition. San Jose, my arm blocks it on the frozen screen, but what you see there is Klim Kostin and Vitek Vanacek. Kostin was part of the Shimmick deal, I believe. He went to San Jose for Shimmick in his 7th, so that's that. Vitek Vanacek being exiled to San Jose for his terrible play in New Jersey. Kaapo Kähkönen going the other way there. And of course they lose Tomas Hertl, which is an extension that should have never been signed. And now Couture is the only big deal really left there. Buffalo, they made one acquisition, and that's Bowen Byram. And he's looked fantastic in Buffalo. Now they've got a three-headed monster of young defensemen with Dahlin, Power, and Byram. Columbus added Jakub Zboril and Malcolm Subban. Subban, goaltending depth with how many injuries? Drop my marker. But you have Merzlikins there. You have Tarasov there. Subban just probably going to play in the AHL with they're not Lake Erie Monsters anymore, the Cleveland Monsters. Jakub Zboril, one of the big draft busts of the 2015 Bruins, where they got DeBrusk, Sporl, and Senyshyn. But he's now in Columbus. I'm surprised it's taken him 10 years to leave Boston. For Pittsburgh, they got Michael Bunting back in the Getzel trade. One of Dubas's guys, one of the Sioux Greyhounds. We'll see if the Pittsburgh Penguins end up like that. But it's the first time I'd say the Pittsburgh Penguins actually sold at the deadline, which is intriguing because it hasn't happened since I've started watching hockey. They've been in the playoffs since 2007 was the first year they got in, and they got eliminated by Ottawa. But 2006 would probably been the last time they sold, and it's been a very long time since then. I was 2 years old, and now I'm 19, almost 20 years old, so says a lot. In Anaheim, the only notable guy they got, Ben Myers. They sold off Henrique and Carrick. Not much else to say there. But yeah, that really concludes it. Not many first-round picks moved at this deadline, I will say, compared to usually speaking, as well as prices were just not as high as in previous years. Toffoli got a 2nd and a 5th. And of course, there were other teams, like guys that were retaining salary. A lot of retained salary this year as well. So Capitals retained on Kuznetsov. Some notable names that weren't moved were Pacioretty, and of course I already mentioned Tyler Johnson, Colin Blackwell. Pavel Buchnevich was rumored to be going to Vegas. He didn't end up going there. But yeah, overall, pretty active trade deadline. Very fun one to watch. But yeah, that's going to be all I have for you guys on this one. I'm happy to get the recap finally over. Sorry about the freezing screen, but I can only do so much, and I didn't want to hold this off this video once again. Thank you guys so much for watching this video, and I shall see you guys in the next one. Have a good one.